What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Into the Necrosphere, number 56, and joining me today is Mike Hill of TOMBS to talk about the new TOMBS record, Under Sullen Skies, which will be brought to us courtesy of Season of Mist Records on November 20th. I love catching up with Mike. I know you guys enjoy it when I have him on the show as well. And this was definitely one for the ages. So stick around. It's going to be coming your way shortly. First of all, though, my demo of the week. And I recently received a really nice message from a guy named Nick Cody out of Florida. Nick writes to me, "Good afternoon, Jackie Smith, and anyone else involved with the Necrosphere podcast. There is only one Into the Necrosphere staff member, and that is me. Just wanted to say how much I enjoy the show, and thank you for introducing me to bands like Sulps. I also really enjoyed your top death metal albums list, especially the episode that featured Kelly Schaefer in it. Thank you very much, Nick. And by the way, the final installment of the Death Metal Countdown series is most likely going to be dropping next week. I had to move a few things around in the scheduling, but I've got Jeremy Wagner lined up, and it's going to be happening, or the recording is going to be happening next week, and then the week after. You guys will be seeing it. So looking forward to finishing that up. I heard during your episode with Kevin Sharp that you accept demo submissions and sometimes feature them on the show. Yes, I do. And if you want to submit your demo to me, send it to intothenecrosphere@gmail.com, as young Nick has done here. So if you had an interest, I wanted to forward you my band, Charred. We're from Florida, just like many of the great artists you mentioned on the show. And I hope you find some enjoyment out of it and can maybe bang your head to some of the tracks. I am probably a little old for headbanging, mate, but I did listen to Prayers of Malediction, the new Charred demo, and I think it is fucking badass. I think also everyone that listens to Into the Necrosphere is going to find it badass. So here's a track coming your way. The song is called The Athame of the Witch King. was A Theme of the Witch King by Prayers of Malediction by a band called Charred. It is available right now on Bandcamp. It is my demo of the week, and I'll post the links to it on the description of this podcast. So check it out, and if you go over there and you buy yourself some music, let old Nick know that I sent you. And Nick, thank you so much for your really, really kind words. The fact that I helped you discover some new music is absolutely one of the reasons why I do the podcast, and hopefully I helped a few folks discover Charred's music. Speaking of new music, I'm going to be reviewing the new Tombs after my interview with Mike. I will also be talking about a band called Cult Burial. As far as the Tombs record is concerned, I know that I don't normally review bands, or I don't normally review releases by bands that I've interviewed, but we're kind of rounding the bend now to the best of 2020 territory. So I wanted to spend a bit of time picking at that record in a bit more detail. I'll also be doing some rants and some news, so stick around for that if that's your thing. If you like hearing me get salty about all of the tripe that comes from the mouth, spews from the mouths of people like Corey Taylor and Tommy Lee. And aside from that, the only other reminder is that if you want to follow the show on social media, you can do so. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. On Instagram and Facebook, it's simply at Into the Necrosphere. On Twitter, it's at iNecrosphere. I mentioned the email address that you can send your demo submissions to earlier, but you can also hit me up on social media if you have anything that you want to wave under my nose. And then finally, if you want to buy yourself some Into the Necrosphere merchandise, head over to Teespring. There's an Into the Necrosphere store on there with t-shirts, hoodies, and all sorts of other cool stuff. And I might add a few things in the run-up to Christmas on there as well. So thank you very, very much for tuning in. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this episode. I know that I said that I was going to have Adam Agius of Alchemist on the show. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a scheduling conflict, so it's most likely going to be that interview will be recorded and dropped in early 2021. But I am very, very confident that this more than makes up for it. Please welcome to the show for I think the third time, my friend Mike Hill of TOMBS. Perfect. So, like I was saying, good evening, young man. How's things going?
Oh, it's going okay. It's the days go on.
Yeah.
It's a bit overcast. But it's nice seasonal weather we're having out here in Jersey.
Yeah, and you've how long ago did you move to Jersey from New York?
Back in May.
Yeah. And what was it? What was the catalyst for that?
I just wanted to get out of the city, man. It was it was just time to move on to something else, and I just was done living in New York. A lot of my friends had left, and it's a lot easier to live out here than it is in the city. And I'd made that decision like right before the pandemic started. So but my moving process was all during the beginning of that stuff. So
yeah. Is it true what they say about kind of the great New York exodus? Because I can't remember whether I read it on Bloomberg or wherever else, but there was a whole big article where somebody was saying, there's so many moving trucks lined up in the streets of places like Brooklyn and Manhattan. It literally looks like moving out day at college.
I think that's a little dramatic. I know a lot of people have left, and I know that business wise, like in the city, like Midtown, like less people are working in offices right now, which that's for sure. That's true. But I mean, yeah, I guess I know a handful of friends who left town and moved somewhere else. So a lot of people moved out here to New Jersey, or because it's like, this is probably the most cost-effective place to move because like Westchester County, like right outside of the New York City is already like way expensive. And, so that's not really an option for like, a lot of people, but moving to like Central Jersey or, out here is like still relatively inexpensive or you just, I wouldn't say it's less expensive, but you get a lot more for your money. I mean, I'm paying essentially the same rent I would pay in the city. But I live like a human being now. Like I have like a like a washer dryer and parking spaces and,
Space for a microwave and a fridge in the kitchen.
Yeah. I mean, I have a brand new kitchen. Like everything's
Yeah.
brand new. This whole place is like, they just renovated it. And I would probably have to pay like $3,000 a month for a place like this in the city.
Yeah. So what's your setup now? Do you live in a condo or do you have do you live in a house? What's the deal?
Yeah. It's like, a small complex. Like there's 3 buildings, which, one of the things that this is like the typical New Jersey apartment thing is like these complexes that look like, they're all kind of the same, you know what I mean? And they have this like motel look to them, which I never really liked. But I found this place that's like, it's basically 3 brownstones. It's like it's like a small little, complex.
Yeah.
And they don't look like hotels, they don't look like a motel. So it has a little bit more of like a kind of like homier like vibe to it. And like I said, they just renovated my apartment and it's, it's a 1-bedroom, I have an eat-in kitchen, washer, dryer, air conditioning, like that kind of, central AC, like all that stuff. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And lot more space and kind of room to breathe and stuff as well.
Oh yeah, man. It's like way more space. And also it's not just run down like in the city, man. Everything is just like beat to hell and used up and ready to fall apart,
Is New York starting to become like you see like 80s New York and the New York that inspired Escape from New York? Is it starting to move in that direction again?
Well, I got to be honest, like I think that started before the pandemic, honestly, because our office used to be technically the office is still in Midtown Manhattan, but I would get off at Herald Square, 34th Street area, which is, solid like Midtown Manhattan. And things have gotten seedier and seedier over the years. Like, a lot of homeless people, like these weird, cardboard box encampments of people like living on the side of the street. Like I hadn't seen anything like that since the early 90s, maybe, late 80s, early 90s when I was like a young kid. And I've had like these on and off periods where I had like a real job. And like the last time I had a real job when I worked in Manhattan, it wasn't anything like that. It was like very, very much like, very clean and kind of orderly. But there was just, and like a lot of times I would get to the office at like really early, like on Fridays, I would come in at like 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And during the winter, it's still dark out. So I just remember getting off the train and there's this one shadowy like corner and there was like 5 dudes like clustered around what used to be a payphone booth, like obviously there's nothing in there. And it was like, it felt like street trash or something. There was these dudes like they're eyeing me up and I'm like, oh Jesus, man.
They've got the dustbin fire going. They're like, hey, you come over here.
Yeah. It was like this really uncomfortable scenario, which I hadn't experienced in a long time. But yeah, it was starting to go that direction anyway. And since all this stuff happened and there's like less people in the city, it's like, I've had to go into the city for work a few times and it's definitely not as crowded, and it's, a lot of people are out of work now too.
Yeah.
Economically things are going poorly and maybe it'll be the 80s again.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you, what do you think has changed? Because obviously, you see from where I'm sitting, I keep a close eye on what's going on in the States, partly because, my job now kind of, goes into that as well. But, why is there this phenomenon of the homeless first and foremost? Like Los Angeles, I've heard, has got, enough, homeless people to fill a fucking small, Eastern European country. New York has the same problem. Obviously there are poorer cities like Baltimore and Detroit and stuff. That's a slightly different case, but there's so much money in New York and San Francisco and Los Angeles. Why is it kind of just general mismanagement? What's the deal?
That's a very complicated question to answer, and definitely has a lot to do with Mayor de Blasio in New York City, and now with the economic downturn that's happening, there's probably not going to be much funding to do anything about it. And in LA, I know that it's been like that for a really long time. Like I remember back, 10, 15 years ago, traveling in Los Angeles and driving through certain areas. And I was like, wow, this is like some post-apocalypse here, and I don't know why LA is like that. I know that in general, like the whole West Coast to me is it like homeless. Like even San Francisco has had a huge homeless population.
Yeah.
And even like the smaller cities like Santa Cruz and, very aggressive too, homeless people,
Yeah.
and I just, it's been, I don't know. It's like this ongoing thing that seems to be coming to a head.
I visited San Francisco about a year ago, and I remember being taken for lunch, like Friday afternoon lunch, and the city is was pretty busy. The restaurant was full. There were the weirdos that were standing outside in the street. It was literally like something out of The Walking Dead. They're ranting incoherently, or they're just like swaying, staring at you. You're like, what in the fuck is this? I mean, I'm from South Africa, so people will go, well, you can't talk based on how dangerous it is there. You don't see that sort of shit in South Africa. You see a lot of extreme poverty. And I think probably it's a little bit more like Rio or like South America, but you don't see any crazy shit like I saw in San Francisco. And I had a friend who lives in Johannesburg, which is super dangerous. He was in Los Angeles. He's like, I take my chances in in Johannesburg 1,000 times over getting off the fucking taxi to walk around in Compton or someplace like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's I think that a lot of it has to do with just what they define as mental illness too. It's like a social worker-esque sort of issue. And just a lack of ability to give people proper therapies and take care of people in a certain way. And people that are obviously mentally ill. I mean, I've seen all variety of homeless person in my life. Just there are obviously mentally ill people who should be in an institution somewhere being cared for.
Yeah.
And then just like hard luck dudes out there, just made a couple of bad decisions in their life and they're homeless,
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It's like it's a multi-layered conversation. The solution's not really one thing. It's like a system needs to be righted in order to really deal with the problem,
Yeah. I don't know whether you ever had that point in your life, but you mentioned, guys making a couple of bad decisions in their life. I remember one of the most, like the day I knew I was an adult, I was about 22 years old, and I was on a train. I think it was one of the first job interviews I ever went to when I was in South Africa, or when I moved from South Africa to the UK. And I remember being on this train, looking around it. I'd never been in that particular station before, and I thought to myself, if someone were to stab me to death right here, or steal my money, or steal, because all I had at the time was whatever was in my wallet. If they take my wallet or they take my phone, I don't know anyone here. No one knows me here. I would be absolutely fucked. Like there's not even a discussion about it. I don't even know where to go for help. And that's like the day that you suddenly realize, oh shit, I'm not a kid anymore.
Yeah, there's no safety net anymore. Definitely. Yeah. Now I've had experiences in life too, or I mean, just even points in my life too, where I was like, man, I'm glad I have like some people that I can count on, because there have been some dicey moments in my life where I haven't had a place to live that was, firm. So yeah, I can appreciate that. And I mean, that's kind of like why, like, I have like this complicated point of view about homeless people, really. It's like, I look at it as more of like this kind of systemic problem as opposed to like, like these people are degenerates or whatever. That doesn't change the fact that I don't want to live around homeless people or that element, really. Because I remember walking to work one morning too. I just literally right by the police station, and right across the street there was some dude shooting up drugs on the sidewalk with a guy like on it, laying on the ground, like high with a needle in his arm. And I was like, man, I haven't seen this since like, it's got to be 20 years since I've seen something like this. I mean, I just don't want to be around that kind of energy. You know what I mean? Anyway. And, but that doesn't mean that I don't have like empathy for the person who's in that situation though,
Yeah, no, of course. And I think you can feel both ways. You can feel like I don't want to be around this shit anymore. But at the same time, it's like, well, it would be, it behooves society to do something about this, because the problem is just going to get worse. Because I'm with you. I moved out of London. I think I might have mentioned this to you when we spoke the last time, that I was headed out. I'm gone now. I live in the countryside. The closest neighbor to me is a mile away. So this is,
that's awesome.
We're locked down again. I don't even feel it. The only thing that sucks is I can't go and train because the gyms are shut. But as far as everything else concerned, my big fear at the moment is I see so much social upheaval happening right now, and I feel like Corona has been the accelerant on it. And in this place, for example, they're now talking about lockdowns until the 2nd of December, but then they're already starting to, or there's these reports coming out saying, oh, they're going to raid your house over Christmas to make sure that you don't have your family with you. And then they go, well, we're extending the financial support until March. So they're kind of setting the table for that to carry on. And I feel like you can only push people so much. You push them enough and you're going to have large scale civil unrest. And obviously I think the cities are going to be the flashpoints for that. I mean, you had, I would imagine you were probably pretty glad that you weren't living in New York when the riots kicked off was it back in August, September?
Yeah. It was, July, August, over the summer. That was when all that stuff was happening. But I mean, still in all, like, it wasn't as bad as it was in the West Coast, though.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like, I mean, I'm like an East Coast person, you know what I mean? And I feel like people on the East Coast are a little bit more reasonable than people out there, especially places like Portland. I've never been a fan of Oregon or Washington State. I mean, I love the nature part of those areas, but the cities to me have just been like some of the most delusional people I've ever seen in my life live there, and extremists, and it's like, the whole thing that happened in Seattle at the Chaz or whatever, it's like, it's exactly like, I mean, it's easy to destroy shit, but it's like, no one has a plan. It's like the same thing that happens in all these, in South American governments that have been overthrown. Like the insurgents have like a great idea to overthrow a government, but they don't have anything to replace it. So in the Chaz, the first thing they did was like create a fascist dictatorship. And
within 2 days, they had segregated zones by race.
Yeah,
they built a wall. They had police that were beating the fuck out of people. Yep. It was nuts. It was absolutely insane. And I mean, obviously, I keep a close eye on what's going on in Portland. I mean, talk about a fuck up. That to me is like they should genuinely do like an Escape from New York kind of thing there, just without telling anybody, just literally just start building the wall around the place and go, right, you guys stay here and do whatever you want, but don't leave.
Yeah, and people got killed. Like 2 people got shot in Portland too. Yeah. I mean, sorry, in Seattle, and that whole like, whatever Chaz, whatever it's called, 2 people got killed, and it was only several weeks, and there was no plan. I don't care if I ever go to Seattle or Portland again. I gotta be honest about that.
It's Jenny Durgan or something who's the mayor there. I mean, the craziest thing was when she says, when the whole Chaz thing started, she's like, oh, this is like Seattle's summer of love. It's like, are you fucking insane?
Yeah, nah, that makes no sense to me at all. I mean, I got to be completely honest with you. I've never been into being in Seattle or Portland. Just on a personal level, I just think those cities they're just not for me, man. It's like that extreme, like just like it's too extreme, their viewpoints out there, and I mean, those are the kind of places that like black mall shows get like shut down, and it's like a very extreme place, and I don't really have there's no place for me there really. So that's why.
So you never went to go pay your respects at Kurt Cobain's grave?
I hate Nirvana, man. I'm not a big Nirvana fan. I remember when Kurt Cobain died, I just didn't give a fuck at all about him. Yeah. And I hate Dave Grohl even more than I hate Nirvana. I think Dave Grohl is like a fucking embarrassment, if you ask me.
He does seem to be like, I find him very disingenuous. Like he'll be on all of these interviews and stuff where it's like he's trying really, really hard to come across as a nice guy, but he just comes across as creepy. Those, like those like 80s, romantic comedies where there was always the sensitive guy hanging around with a girl and like he's her best friend, but really he's just trying to sleep with her. He's kind of like that.
Yeah. I mean, if I don't know if you ever seen the movie Your Friends and Neighbors with Jason Patrick and Ben Stiller. If they ever made a docu pic about Nirvana, I'd cast early 90s Ben Stiller to play Dave Grohl. That's who I would cast. Just like this, like conniving, like disingenuous, like guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But dude, we're here to talk about Under Sullen Skies, and I have to say, I posted something about this on Instagram last night. I said the battle for the best record of 2020 is becoming like the fucking Royal Rumble. Like every time you think, okay, I've got it sussed, then the buzzer goes, and there's another guy that comes running into the ring. It feels like that with just the volume of incredible stuff that's come out in 2020, especially in the black metal scene. And I think your new record is definitely going to be right up there with that. I mean, you must surely be pretty psyched with the response that you've had so far to the music that has come out. Obviously, the people haven't heard the whole thing yet, and we'll talk about that in a second, because I think they've got quite a surprise in a good way coming their way. But based on what's come out now, people's response, you must be seriously psyched about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty overjoyed. I mean, everyone across the board is appreciating the record, and Decibel just released their top 40 of 2020, where we log in there at number 22. So that's pretty cool. And I'm pretty satisfied with it, I'm really, really upset that we couldn't this year go out there and tour on this record, or even Monarchy. That both of those, our set is basically those two records, so that would be just a great live sort of thing. And that's the only downside, and that's a pretty big downside, really, is not being able to tour and play these songs live. So, but other than that, I'm pretty happy with everything.
I was going to ask you, and I hope it doesn't sound like a redundant or a stupid question, but how does it feel? Because I guess you're used to that cycle of I put out a record, I'm putting out a record with an idea that straight after that I'm going to go out on the road and I'm going to go and promote it. How does it feel putting out something like Under Sullen Skies, where the hype is significant and people really, really like it, and then was kind of caught in the state of flux that we're in right now?
It's like the worst feeling in the world, Jamie. I got to be honest about that. It really is, man. Especially since, I mean, our last LP, which I'm pretty vocal that I dislike, the Grand Annihilation as a record. That kind of came out and with nothing really. It's just that record was like one day it came out. And we toured hard on that record. Like we were out on the road all year, really.
Yeah.
With no anything, like no mention by anyone that it even was released. And so on the tails of living through that experience, as well as all the interpersonal bullshit that went on around making that record, it was to have like such a strong record, two records, I'm counting the EP too. Two really strong releases in 1 year, and then just being like the Achilles heel being cut, the Achilles tendon being cut, and you're just laid up, for an unknown amount of time. It's like the worst feeling in the world, because I would like nothing more to be out on the road playing these songs, and doing festivals and, just tearing it up, and it's like horrible to know that I have no idea when we'll be able to get back to doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And also, I mean, a lot of this new stuff, you can just tell by listening to it, especially if you've been in the game for a period of time, that it's going to go over really, really well. Not just with Tombs fans, but, with anyone that sees it. There's a real kind of live feel to a lot of the songs, because they all have, particularly on the full length record of the new album, almost every song to me feels like it has that moment where if you didn't know the band and you saw you live for the first time, you'd go, fuck, that sounds incredible. And it would be something that you take away and that you'd remember, which is difficult, because a lot of bands have great songs, but you kind of need to know them to appreciate them live. Whereas I feel like this is, I felt bad for you when I heard the album, because I felt like this is the record that if you guys went and you did a support slot with Mayhem, for example, and no one, 20% of the audience knew you, they would go, Jesus Christ, this is really, really good.
Yeah. I mean, that's how I feel too, and it's like I said, it's just the luck of the Irish, man, just to my father's side of the family's luck is looming, reaching into all those years and decades and centuries of that Gaelic, sort of like bad luck is manifesting this year with me. So yeah, that's it's unfortunate, but once again, you just got to persevere, and just push on, and someday we'll be able to get back out there, but it is a terrible feeling though.
Like the flip side, and again, I don't want to labor the point and send you into a spiraling depression here, but the flip side, I guess, is that you have more of a captive audience. There's more people sitting at home. I feel like more people are paying attention now to music that's coming out than did last year this time. And maybe that's just my perception, or maybe that's me projecting, because I'm certainly paying a lot more attention to music that's coming out. But I feel like there's more of a captive audience. So, potentially the kind of silver lining to all of this is you're creating, or you're building up that pent up demand, so that people go, Under Sullen Skies is fucking amazing. It's one of my best favorite records of 2020. And then finally in 2025, when you can start touring again and the steroids go in the knees and
yeah, man, I'll be dead by then probably.
People can't wait to hear it. But no, but you know what I mean, though. You kind of have people that potentially are going to be paying more attention to it, and paying attention to, I guess, a broader range of bands than they ordinarily would, because they have more time now.
I could see that, and also the other thing I know, like just even on a personal level for me, I for a while, I mean, living in the metro area, New York City area, or even to drive down to Philly to see shows, it's like there was so many live things going on, so many events and things to go to, that you get a little bit lazy about going out, to see bands. Like I know I've missed tons of shows that I probably would have gone. Now I wish I would love to have gone to those. And I just think that for me, I made a vow to myself that once live music becomes a thing again, I'm not going to find excuses to not go anymore. I'm just going to go. It's like, it's just, when it's not there, you appreciate it, and now like I could even drive down to Philly pretty easily from here too, from where I live out in Jersey. And there's tons of stuff that goes on in Philadelphia. And, like I said, I'm like maybe a 40-minute drive back to Brooklyn, or into Manhattan, so there's no reason to miss anything. And even in Jersey, there's a lot of shows that happen, like smaller shows that I'm going to go to,
Yeah.
And I just hope that, maybe when we finally get out back on the road, like a little bit of that sentiment might be out there too,
Yeah. I mean, I think so. And, I've spoken about this on the podcast a few times. I feel like because there's not that level of emotional investment in music like there used to be when, you and I were probably growing up, you see that translates to a deterioration in the level of intensity from the audience at shows. Like you think about a record like Decade of Aggression, you didn't even need to be at the show to pick up from that album just how fucking nuts that audience was going.
Oh yeah.
And I remember seeing Slayer on one of their last ever shows in London. I mean, the crowd was barely doing anything. They were loud and they were cheering and stuff. But in comparison to the first time that I saw Slayer, back when people actually had to pay for music and buy CDs, and you had to go through the physical act of going, there's my £15 or my $15 for a CD. I feel like when people stopped needing to do that, the value they hinged on the art form dropped. So what I'm thinking is maybe, the fact that they've been deprived of being able to see shows now, it kind of builds up that I guess that level of emotional investment back up, so that when the next shows happen, you probably need to double up on security because people are going to go fucking insane.
I hope so. I mean, and the downside too, another downside is just that I think like the practicality of actually touring might be a little bit rough at first too, just because, I mean, I can imagine like promoters being reluctant to guarantee the money they used to, because they have no idea how many people are going to show up, or, it's like, well, I can't really, we'll have to do some sort of percentage door deal or whatever, where like we'll give you this reduced fee plus points, and it's just the lot, like out here, if you go on like a full US, 30-day tour, it's risky. I mean, you go out there, you got to drive through these like parts of the country. I mean, everyone takes a loss through the Midwest because for certain types of music, that's just not like a lucrative market. It's like a B market, if you will. aside from maybe Chicago or something like that. But so to make it through those kind of like lean areas of the country on like reduced, just the logistics of making it happen, it might have to be like shorter tours just in some, different parts of the country at a, not just full US tours, or because even packaging bands together too, the expenses and the uncertainty of who's going to show up, like all that kind of stuff, it just adds to just like this really uncertain feeling,
Yeah, yeah. Obviously, in Chicago as well, you have to switch to Venmo because you can't carry cash in you because the crime is a bit rough. But no, I was going to ask you what cities in the States are kind of tomb cities and cities where the crowd is going to lose their shit for you guys.
I would say Chicago is. I love playing in Chicago. I feel like we got a decent amount of fans in Chicago. New York. Towns in New Jersey are definitely. Philly. There's a small. I would say we got a pretty decent. Response of in Boston. Places like Austin, Texas. The major cities on the West Coast like L.A., San Diego. San Francisco. I mean, hell, man, we played San Francisco. I remember in 1 year, in a 12-month period, I played San Francisco 5 times, like in this one particular stretch. And it was around when Grand Annihilation came out. We were out there just constantly just circling around the country. And I saw the promoter and we played there and I was like, hey, man, I'll see you later. All right. I'll see you in a couple months. And it was just like, yeah, I'll see you guys in a couple months. And it was just like one of those things. And not so much the hardcore, like the heartland of the United States is not really, Columbus. Well, actually, Columbus, Ohio, I would say the last time we played there, I was pleasantly surprised on how well attended the show was. And we actually arrived late because we had mechanical problems on the way down there. And I remember being in the van and we're just like, man, we're going through all this shit. There's gonna be like 3 people there or whatever. And it was just like, it was actually a pretty full house when we got down there. But some of these places like St. Louis, not so much, Louisville, not really our kind of town, there's like huge like swaths of the country that I don't even know what maybe country music is like their thing, like modern country music. I don't know.
Yeah.
And those are but you have to get through those parts of the country to get to the coasts, and it's like driving through like Wyoming or something like that. It's like I don't even know if there's anywhere to play shows there,
Yeah.
I mean, I have played there over the years, but there you go. I can't remember where,
Yeah. I feel also you guys have built up quite a distinct fan base, and part of how I got that impression is it's always interesting for me to see the types of responses I get because I post on the Into the Necrosphere Instagram page. I'll post like what I'm listening to, and I always try and put a blurb in there and kind of give just not a review, but just a summary of kind of what I thought of the record, why I like it. And I've obviously put quite a lot of stuff on there about Tombs, and some of the private messages that I get, some of the DMs that I get, and also some of the response that I get when you've been on the show in the past or when I've spoken about the show. About Tombs. I feel like Tombs has quite a unique fan base. Definitely. And I don't mean to sound like I'm placating you, but definitely I feel like the average Tombs fan has a more sophisticated palate, shall we say, than the average Dark Funeral fan. No disrespect to Dark Funeral, but you know what I mean. Like I don't think necessarily people that are, creaming their shorts about the next Cradle of Filth album are the same people that are looking forward to checking out Under Sullen Skies.
That makes sense. I mean, I imagine that the people that like the band are similar to me, like the kind of stuff I like, really. I like a lot. I mean, I like a lot of different types of music, but I imagine someone who appreciates, like Fields of the Nephilim and Mayhem would probably like our band, or even like, I love, like Integrity or something like that, and I mean, for me, so a lot of times what I'll do is like when we play shows, I'll just see what kind of t-shirts people are wearing that are out there in the audience. And I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. Behemoth, like Integrity. I see a lot of I Hate God t-shirts. I'm like, oh, that makes sense to me. It's like, And, you know, or like Death in June or something like that. I'm like, oh, I get it. You know, it's like, you know, this dude is like into metal, but like his girlfriend probably told him about like Douglas Pierce or something, and he's trying to like branch out into like gothic music or something. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that too, which I take stock in. That's kind of like the people that like the band.
I take a firm hand to that sort of stuff. My girlfriend knows. Unfortunately, one of the things about being with me is the music is generally speaking going to be my selection. She listens to a lot of hip hop and stuff, which is not my. I mean, I like old school gangster rap, but I don't like. I mean, new hip hop and stuff like that. I mean, God, and fortunately, she draws the line at WAP.
Oh wow, I don't even know what the hell that is, man.
Dude, have you not heard that yet? So it's Cardi B's latest hit, Wet Ass Pussy.
Oh wow, damn, that's pretty aggressive, man.
Dude, it's fucking nuts. If you watch the video, I mean, I've not seen the whole thing, but it's fucking horrific. I mean, I'm 40 years old, and I know, like when it came out, people at work were asking me about it, and I did sit thinking to myself, look, it's really rich coming from me to say this is fucked up, considering the fact that, you know, I listen to the stuff that I listen to, you know, and I think it's hysterical when you know, Goal's standing on stage with naked people crucified behind him.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, it's the dumbing down of the human race, in my opinion. When I look at stuff like that, I mean, it's incoherent English. It's just complete and utter, just total shit. And what I can't stand about popular culture, especially now, is not only do they hammer down their ridiculous agenda on you all the time, but it's just so badly dumbed down. At least in the 80s, you know, there was stuff like Depeche Mode, and there were things like Aha. I mean, you could still listen to that and go, maybe that's not my thing, but I still see some level of musical talent in that, or some level of artistic sincerity.
Well, I mean, I actually a pretty big like old school like hip hop fan. I mean, I really got it. I mean, I was a rabid Wu-Tang fan, you know, in the late 90s. And now that's shortly after that is when I kind of trailed off. And I think like the style changed a little bit after that. But I have to say, a lot of the guys at the gym, like a lot of the dudes I train with are like these younger dudes, and they got you know, they'll play some like new school stuff like while we're training, and it's like some of it's pretty good. Some of it kind of grew on me, actually. I don't really know any of the artists. I know maybe Trevor Scott is a name that comes to mind, because I actually was like, oh, who is this? This is pretty cool. There's a song called Moose Bumps, which is like, or Goosebumps rather. And I'm like, yeah, Moose Bumps is that's a cool Keith reference. But yeah, it's yeah, like that. Some of that stuff's pretty cool. And but you know, it seems kind of disposable too at the same time.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, again, when I knew I was old was when I was, this is about 5-6 years ago. I was at an event where they were the graduates that came in as kind of the early part of the early careers program at the company that I was working at. They were having a party and they invited me. So I went, having a conversation with them, and I said, you know, what music are you into? And they were like, oh, we really like old school hip hop. So I said, oh, like what? Like Cypress Hill, NWA and stuff like that. And they literally looked at me like I was fucking speaking Greek. And I was like, Jesus Christ, man, you know, I know who the Rolling Stones are. I wasn't alive when they were, you know, a big deal. You know, they still are a big deal, but, you know, when they were like at their peak, I wasn't alive when Led Zeppelin was, you know, playing Earl's Court, but I know who they are and I know their music. How do you not even bother to delve back like one generation? You know, like old school to them is like Ja Rule and shit like that. I mean, and that to me is when, like, I feel like the worst thing that ever happened to hip hop was Dr. Dre, and that kind of overproduced R&B influence that came into it. As soon as it went away from being like a bass line and a drum beat and the vocal being the hook, it turned into complete garbage.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like less street, you know what I mean? And like I mean, the Masters, in my opinion, were Public Enemy, because like they're like I mean, they sounded almost like an industrial like band with their you know, the beats were like the BPM was like a little faster, and like there was noise and like sirens, and you know, just it had it I mean, they were like a big crossover, I think. I mean, like once again at that age group that I was at, all I knew really was like New York City, and like I hadn't really been anywhere else besides them. So all I just knew about was like the experience of growing up in the suburbs of New York and going into the city. And like, I didn't see much difference between like hip hop culture and like the late 80s and like hardcore culture. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the New York hardcore bands were very much influenced by hip hop culture. And, so yeah, to me, they seem they go hand in hand, and I felt like Public Enemy was like an extreme band too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of like great rap from that era, I would assume if you like Wu-Tang, you did listen to one of the greatest hip hop records of all time, Gravediggers, 6 Feet Deep.
That's a classic.
I can't repeat the original name because I'll get canceled. But
we don't want that.
Bro, what a fucking record! That was really like the album that I went through a period of my life where, for me, the only music was death and black metal. And then I think it kind of started with getting into The Sopranos, and The Sopranos has this really rich soundtrack, and I started getting into a lot of stuff, and like my music taste just expanded in all directions. But it was a friend of mine that gave me 6 Feet Deep, and I was just blown away by it. I thought it was absolutely incredible. And then another thing he gave me was a record called The Psycho Realm by a band called Psycho Realm. And those two records, for me, that is to me the apex of great hip hop.
Yeah, 6 Feet Deep is a classic, I think. I mean, most people I know consider that to be a classic. And I mean, the thing that got me was usually in hip hop, they talk about like smoking blunts and everything. They actually talk about taking psychedelics in one of the songs. There's the song Trippin'.
Yeah.
He's talking about taking LSD, that song. That was like a very un-hip hop thing to have in your songs. Usually it's like smoking blunts and, doing, crack, cocaine and all this stuff. But like they had a song about like taking, eating acid or something,
Yeah.
That was pretty far out.
But again, a great example of how effective, like that track, Here Come the Gravediggers, literally a 2-note bass line, a drum sample, and just rapping. And it just works so well. And I find like, I've mentioned this a few times on the show, but I find like when a vocalist to me is really, really good in metal is when they can master the same thing that those guys did, where their voice almost becomes like an additional instrument, and the timing of their voice is part of the hook in the song. I can't stand the typical kind of typewriter vocal that just goes, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, I agree.
It sounds fucking terrible. But yeah,
that's a whole style in and of itself, though. Really, I mean, it's like Bobby Torres, the guy who recorded our last 2 records. Like his studio up in Clifton, New Jersey, is like the epicenter for like that sort of djent style of music, where it's like everything is like totally like perfect, like every single note is like been corrected. And I've listened to some of the stuff that he was mixing up there, and it's like everything has been like nudged, all the vocals are exactly in the right spot, and it's this very right on the beat style. And I know that like that's a thing, like that's a style, you know what I mean? And probably started by Cannibal Corpse, really. I think they're probably one of the purveyors, maybe the grandfathers of that style, maybe. But it's not really my cup of tea. But I like the more looser like vocals.
Yeah, I agree. I was about to say, I think Jen should be kept in. It should be confined to Portland with the rest of the world's bad ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I spoke about surprises on Under Sullen Skies. I mean, how surprised do you think people are going to be when they hear some of the rap that you did on some of the later tracks?
Yeah, I think it might turn off some people. You know what I mean?
No, so I'm fucking around. Obviously, by the time people hear this, they would have heard the record most likely. But one thing for me that was interesting about the album, it kind of lulls you in by there's a few hints on those first songs that maybe something different is coming, but you kind of those first 3 tracks are super fast, furious, and aggressive. Probably the most aggressive I've heard you be. Maybe in your entire career. Then you've got The Hunger, which I think is great. I think is, in terms of a single, I think is just fantastic. And then all of a sudden the album like shifts several gears, and it goes down some of the strangest, darkest, most interesting, and I think most creatively free sounding things I think I've ever heard you do, and I think it's incredibly intense. I feel like it's obviously, I'm a fan of the Grand Annihilation, but I feel like that track 5 and on is super intense, but I kind of sort of see, if you were to compare the two as an artist, why you would have this aversion towards the Grand Annihilation based on what you've done on this record. And I hope I made sense with that, but I think you know what I'm driving at.
Yeah, I mean, the Grand Annihilation was and there was so much going on behind the scenes on that record too. Just like so many like just conflicts within the band and like certain things that were supposed to be done, like synthesizers and all this other stuff that just never didn't get made, did never get the guy who was handling that stuff just didn't care enough to be part of it, and also just at the time our drummer wasn't necessarily like an extreme music drummer, and I feel like his limitations kind of affected maybe the ferocity of some of the songs that were on that record. There's some tracks on that record I think are a little bit slower than I had intended them to be, and like the tempos weren't as brutal as I think they should have been. So like now with like Justin on drums, like the guy, he could play. I mean, that's his bread and butter, is playing extreme music. Like he's a drummer's drummer, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Okay, so where do we lose each other?
We were just talking about the difference, like sort of the stylistic shift between like Grand Annihilation, and like I was saying earlier, there's there was so much going on behind the scenes when we made Grand Annihilation, and just interpersonal stuff. Like there's a lot of this drama. Like there were parts of the record that never got made because the synth player just didn't care to show up anymore. And, even on a technical level, the drummer that we were working with during that period wasn't necessarily an extreme drummer, and with the current lineup, we've got, everyone's pretty much on the same page creatively. And I think the result is that we have, the Under Sullen Skies and Monarchy of Shadows, which are more coherent, I feel. And I feel like it's all, even though there is a variety of different types of styles and different sounds and different textures on the record, it's all coming from like a very powerful sort of place, creatively within the band. And that's like the main shift, I think, is that everyone's kind of working together, and I haven't had that in like a while, believe it or not.
And it sounds to me as well, like I feel like, I think we may have spoken about this before, but there's like a degree of confidence that I hear on this album that I most definitely, I think was definitely very absent from the Grand Annihilation. Again, I think this is the most confident I've heard you on an album, and the most comfortable with what you're making. Like you're clearly enjoying what you're doing, and that really comes across in the music.
Yeah, I think so. And it's like kind of like I just feel like we're all in, it's like if you're going to go and have like a fight or something, and that you trained and that you're in good shape and your cardio is going to like stand up. You try things that, you feel comfortable, you feel confident in being able to execute a lot of these things. And, if you've done all the right things in your, training and all that, then that you can handle a lot of stuff. And that's kind of how I feel like with the band right now. That we all have spent tons of time practicing, and it's and rehearsals are like they're not like a chore, it's like we literally legitimately like hanging out with each other, which is cool, and like I said, the last era of the band, there were just so much personal shit that was going on that was like negative, and really bad vibes. And now things are not like that anymore. And I just think that the overall tone of the band has changed a lot, you know?
Yeah, no, and you hear it. So obviously, you guys are going to be pretty high up on the on the list as far as best records of 2020 is concerned. I'm fairly confident Decibel won't be the only list you appear on. You're on the calibration list at the moment for the top 20 of Into the Necrosphere, and let's be frank, that's much more important than Decibel.
Sure.
What's your take on some of the music that's come out this year? What's grabbed your attention?
Oh man, right off the bat, the new Napalm Death record that's my number one for sure. That's like incredible, that record. And some people, they expect to have a certain thing out of Napalm Death, and that is not necessarily what they get on the album, which is what the things that Napalm delivers on that record is exactly what I want to hear. It's like a variety of different styles and textures, and you can hear like their Young Gods like influences, and Swans and all this sort of stuff on that record, and as well as like incredibly well written and well executed death grind, or whatever you want to call their style of music. And and
what I think is amazing about those guys is that they've been doing it for as long as they have, and they continue to produce great music, because I think it's so difficult. There's I think everybody has a kit bag full of tricks, and some people's kit bag is larger than others. Folks like Slayer ran out of, their last great idea was Seasons in the Abyss. If we're very brutally honest now, there's music they made after that I enjoyed, but I think that there's an element of nostalgia that made me enjoy that. If I had to hear a brand new band and they sounded like Slayer on World Rain and Blood, I would have thought this is a load of fucking wank. But Napalm Death, to this day, they seem to just always find a way to make an incredible record that has enough of the Napalm Death staple sounds to it, but enough evolution and enough experimenting to make you go, wow, and to still surprise you. And I thought they really did that well on this album too.
Yeah, it's a great album, and there's this band, Bambara. They have a record called Stray that came out this year too, and they're definitely not a metal band, but they're like in this kind of if you took like the Birthday Party and the Gun Club and this sort of dark Americana vibe to it, and like a noise rock kind of thing, even though I hate that noise rock name. Just something that just doesn't sit right with me for some reason. I don't know.
Sounds like something in alternative press or NME.
Yeah, it's like a journalist term, or like
it sounds like a hipster term.
Yeah, like post metal or some bullshit like that. It's like, what the fuck is that? But it's just, for lack of a better term, I can see people adding that tag to what these guys do. And they're based in New York, but they're from Athens, Georgia. And this lady I know out in Phoenix, Retta Evans, she works at a tattoo shop out there. She actually turned me on to them. She's like, oh, I think you should check these guys out. And I was like, oh, sure. She's got great taste in music.
Well, I remember you playing one of their songs on one of the Everything Went Black episodes, because you always have the intro and the outro. I remember hearing it and absolutely loving it. And it's become a bit of a staple for me as well. Like, especially when I go, I'm an audio nut. So anytime I test out new hi-fi equipment or something like that, I really like the recording and the fidelity of that new record. I think it sounds incredible. I mean, I've listened to it on, systems that cost in excess of six figures, and it sounds phenomenal. So well recorded.
Yeah. Yeah. They have like the very cool, like kind of eerie like sound. And, that's probably one of my other favorite records of the year. And the new, the band Imperial Triumphant, they have a new album that came out this year. That's a great record too.
That's too avant-garde for me. You're not the first person that told me to check it out. Marco from Stellar Master Elite's a big fan, and he said I should listen to it. And I got to like the third song, and I was like, not sure about this. And I know there may well be a day that I go back, I listen to the record, and I'm like, Mike, you were 100% right. but it's not on the calibration list at the moment.
I'm trying to think what else came out this year. There's like
the new Ecclese. Did you hear that?
I didn't know that came out. I didn't know that came out.
So it comes out on the 14th of December.
Oh, okay.
Deborah Morty premiered it on YouTube last night, and I've listened to it about 3 or 4 times. Fuck me, is it good? I mean, like some of the most intense, hateful, darkest shit that I have heard in my entire life. Like, you know, when you think a band can't kind of push the boundary of just evil in black metal, they found a way. So it is fucking incredible.
Oh, I gotta check. Well, when it comes out, I'll get it. You know,
it's like that. Obviously, the new Inquisition single came out last night. I've nearly flipped a lid. Regardless of the background to that band, I don't give a shit. I can separate the artist from the art. You know, I like Burzum as well, and I'm not a fucking lunatic like Varg. But that new Inquisition single was awesome as well. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I liked them on record, but I saw them live one time, and I was like really disappointed. But
that's cool. two guys on stage. I can't imagine that would. I've never seen them, so I might be wrong. But I've always looked at it and gone, I don't know if I would feel like I like chaos on stage. You know, I don't want anything even remotely nice. Like for me, one of the greatest bands I've ever seen live is Biohazard, because there's just, I mean, like, you know, if you watch them in their glory days, it's just mayhem, and the audience is going insane, and you've got, you know, Billy, you know, lying on his back inside the in the audience, and Evan, you know, acting the fool. Speaking of fools, have you ever heard any of the new Evan Seinfeld music?
I can't imagine it being any good, really.
It would depress you so much, mate. You'd
which ones? I know that he had a couple of different projects that he was working on. One like Attica 13 or something like that.
Well, that was, I mean, Attica 13 was shit, but this is like next level shit. Like, imagine, like, you know all the bad rap music that we just spoke about now. Roll that up into just a ball of bullshit, and then that's what you get with these new stuff. It's diabolical. I'd sooner listen to Cardi B. I'll go back. I'll go one step further. I'll sooner listen to Kamala Harris covering Cardi B than listen to Evan Seinfeld.
So it's like a hip hop thing with like metal added to it.
No, like hip hop with a terribly pretentious hip hop attitude. Like there's no metal whatsoever. He's basically just talking about his money and his girlfriend.
Yeah, you see, I think I know this is going to sound like, especially I think that like hip hop is kind of like a young man's game, really. You know what I mean? It's like there's certain styles, like being a pro skater. You know, you can't be a pro skateboarder when you're like 50. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like I feel like hip hop. It's like it's a youth thing, you know, it's a young man's game. And the kids that are making hip hop now, I can't relate to them at all.
No,
like, but back, like I said, when I was a kid,
they got drunk and someone played tic-tac-toe on their face.
Yeah. I mean, but when I was a kid, I was able to relate to a lot of that music, and that's but now I look back on that as like more like, you know, it's like not nostalgia, because I think it's great music, but you know, it's I'm appreciating the younger version of myself, appreciating what they're doing and remembering things, I guess, you know, but I find it's a little, I would be a little embarrassed if I was like an older gentleman trying to make hip hop music, you know?
Yeah. So. Especially an older gentleman like him. And he also, I mean, I knew there was trouble because I like tattoos. I obviously got tattoos myself, but what I think looks abysmal is when people do these blackouts on one entire arm. The moment that he got that, I knew this.
That's what he has. He has a completely black arm.
He's done. I think a blackout on both arms, and he used to have some decent stuff. He had like Paul Booth tattoos, I think, on his arms. He had good stuff. I think he's got blackouts now. He looks like a complete fucking weapon, mate. He literally looks awful.
You know, people. So, you know, maybe that living out in LA all that time, like kind of made him lose his mind a little bit. It
must be. But you mentioned pro skate. You know, you can't be old and be a pro skater. You can be 54 and be Mike Tyson, though. Have you seen the hype building up for this fight with Roy Jones Jr.?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch that. But
for fucking sure.
So, I mean, similar to pro skating, fighting is definitely a young man's game, man. It's like,
Oh yeah.
unless you're on some sort of like supplements or, you got like steroids or, TRT or whatever. It's like, I mean, I don't know how they're testing those guys, but that's definitely, I mean, I'm going to watch the fight for sure. If anyone can do it, Mike can do it, Iron Mike.
Oh, Mike looks great. I mean, he looks in physically incredible shape. I would say USADA is probably not going to be there, so I think they're going to be okay. It's going to be the Strike Force testing. Speaking of which, and if this is a personal question, I get it, but I'll be very open with my views on this. I'm 40 years old now. I've said the moment that I start seeing anything slip as far as the weight that I can raise at the gym or how hard I'm kicking a bag, I will literally go to a doctor. I'll say, on the spectrum of normal to near life-threatening, I want you to move my testosterone as close to that as is legally allowable. I know once you're in the TRT game, you're in the TRT game for the rest of your life, but I don't give a fuck. I can't. Maybe it's just a fear of getting old. I can't get my head around not being able to walk into the gym and at least hold my own. Like, have you any thoughts on that?
I mean, I've never been like a weightlifter type. Well, I mean, that's not true. I was for a long time, but like for the last, like, I don't know, a couple, at least 15 years, I just really, I lift weights, but I don't like, I do kettlebells, like a lot of stuff like that. Like not so much like max out on the bench or squat, but as far as like, martial arts type stuff and that kind of thing, that's more of my game really. And yeah, I've had like a lot of injuries, like my knees and all that sort of stuff. And I mean, I don't feel like I've slowed down really. It's more of just like, this is what it is. It's recovery. It's like if I had to do like a fight camp or something like that, I don't think I'd be able to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There was a period of time where like a few years ago, I didn't have a job really, and I was like struggling. And my friends like, why don't you go and take some pro fights or something like that? I'm like, are you out of your fucking mind, dude? I'm like, not. He's like, yeah, you look pretty good in the gym and everything. I'm like, yeah, but dude, it's not that. It's the camp that would kill me.
Yeah.
Like the training camp is what would do me in, not so much like, yeah, if I could just walk in like on, with no fight camp for one round or something like that, maybe, but like the amount of damage that you take doing like a 6 or 8 week training camp, it would just destroy my body.
Yeah. Especially a pro level camp. I had one of the most sobering moments of my life when I was doing, I did a couple of semi-pro Thai boxing fights. And the very last one that I did, I walked into the prep area and there was this fucking behemoth busy getting ready. And I remember joking and, saying, I wonder who the poor loser is who's fighting this monster. And I walked in and it was something that I'd taken a short notice. So the promoter comes in and I'm like, hey, Phil, how's it going? Blah, blah, blah. Who am I fighting? And he points to this guy and he goes, Sammy over there. I'm like, oh my fuck. The fight starts and I kind of eye the guy up and I see he's got really thick tree trunk legs. They look a little, my legs are thick too, and as a result, I'm not particularly flexible. So I'm like, okay, I don't need to worry too much about a high kick. I need to watch the legs, watch the body, and watch the punch. We touched gloves, and I have video of this. As I'm withdrawing my hand, the first head kick lands. And I'm literally like on the video, you can see I'm like stunned, and I sort of, it takes me like a split second to regain my consciousness. And then I outboxed the guy. I mean, literally just kept closing the distance, outboxed him for about 3 rounds, and then last 2 rounds. At the start of the 4th, he landed a leg kick that if somebody had run up to me with a baseball bat and hit me full pelt, it would be on a par. And he landed about 7 of those, and I could barely walk back to the corner. And he went pro about 6 months later, and that's when I realized, like, if you're gonna stay fucking around in your little semi-pro nonsense, that's okay. But when you take a step up, it's a big step up. Yeah.
Was that? Were you guys wearing shin guards or no shin guards?
No shin guards.
Yeah, that's no joke to get hit with a bare shin, man, for sure. Anywhere, legs or head or any of that kind of stuff.
I was walking around like fucking Gregory House for about a week after that.
Yeah.
I took the only solace I took is when he went pro. I went up to him and I said, Sammy, that was a great job, because I mean he just mauled that poor dude. And he said, "Yeah, you're a much more difficult opponent." And I was like, "I'm gonna take what I can take there because you fucked me up."
Is there a lot of Thai boxing in the UK?
Yeah. It's really big over here, and I was really lucky. I was part of probably one of the coolest groups of men that I've ever met. The guy has since the promoter has since gone on to do something pretty big. I think they actually have some of their fights on UFC Fight Pass. It's like the Muay Thai Grand Prix. They used to be called Team TU, but some of these guys have gone. Quite a few of the guys used to train with him. Has gone pro. But just great dudes, and people that I can go 2-3 years without speaking to, and if I happen to bump into them some way, it's like you haven't lost a stitch. But hard guys, and we all train really hard as well. I remember on a Saturday morning, you wake up and you've had maybe 8-9 sessions of training throughout the week, and you look down at your legs and it literally looks like fucking cheetah skin. It's just like from all the bruising and all the pounding that you've taken. But I haven't done Thai boxing now for quite a while. I'll hit the bags around from time to time, but that's about it. The rest of the time I just do weights.
Yeah, it's like that Dutch way of sparring, like really hard to the body. And like I trained at a bunch of different places, and like the first gym I trained at was Koban, the famous Thai boxer from back in the day with the legendary fights with Ramon Deckers.
Yeah.
And the style of sparring there was very much like in that Thai style where it's like very light, and more about timing and everything. And then occasionally, if someone had a fight camp, then you'd have to go hard. And then a lot of the other places that I went to had more like that European, like Dutch style where it was just, fucking hard, body, hard to the body, hard to the legs, like that kind of thing.
I had we had one guy, so he wasn't part of Team TU, but we had a small group of us used to have a sparring session with a guy who was Belgian. He had trained in Holland as a kickboxer, but he was also at one point in his life in the Russian ballet company. And the man who gave me, aside from the Sammy guy, the man who gave me the worst beatings of my entire life, it's this dude. Because when we sparred against him, it was like you're literally fucking fighting for your life. I mean, he hit me so hard once. I remember going back to the office and sitting and trying to drink water, and I couldn't swallow properly. The water kept running out, and I was like, my jaw was literally like knocked to the side. I had to go to the hospital and have it checked out. And they were like, it's bruised, which is why it feels like it's lopsided. But he just had this way of, I think because of the ballet, he could just pinpoint every single thing with such perfect accuracy and such unbelievable effect. Like he would get you in the corner and like just hold his leg up and just smack you across the face a few times just for fun. But I love those times though. And I think one of the worst things that you can do if you ever have a son is to not have them in that environment, because I think any boy, any man needs to have a humbling force in their life, and nothing will humble you and bring you down to earth quite like a punch in the face or a kick in the shins.
Yeah, definitely. We just had one of the guys at our gym just got a contract from the Dana White Contender Series this past Tuesday.
Oh, awesome!
Yeah, there's a Nico Mata. He's but the gym I train at is called Driven Gym in Woodbridge, New Jersey, and I just started there back as soon as when I moved down here. Everything was closed, obviously, and I just started training over there back in August. And they have Muay Thai, that's more my thing. Then they also have an MMA team and jiu-jitsu. And I'm not trying to grapple with anybody right now during this pandemic, but when things sort out, eventually I'll be back on the mats doing that too. But yeah, Nico won and he got a contract, so he's in the UFC now. So that's pretty cool.
Badass. I've met Dana White probably about 8-9 years ago, and he gets a lot of stick as a human being and as a guy, and as how he manages fighters and stuff like that. But I must honestly say, in the 10 minutes I spoke to him, he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met.
Yeah, I imagine he's a pretty cool guy. Like I just politically, especially right now, like he's like a big Trump guy, like spoken to a Republican. Like I'm like, I know. Like I've had this conversation all the time about like how when George Bush was president in this country, like obviously I didn't agree with him. I wasn't a supporter of his, but I didn't have such like disdain for people who supported him. I mean, I just looked at it as like, we're all countrymen, you know, we have differences in political views, but you know, that's the beauty of living in a democracy, you know, like all this kind of rhetoric. But now it's like, I feel like these guys are, I feel like it's like post Treaty of Versailles Germany right now in this country. You know, I feel like the way the National Socialists sort of tried to unify Germany as like, we're going to return to our former glory. You know what I mean? That's what the MAGA people feel like to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I have a hard time, and I want to get over this, you know, because it's a very you know, like the divisive way of living. And it's just, but it's hard to like not look at somebody who supported Donald Trump as a fucking National Socialist or some sort of weirdo like that, you know?
Yeah. But I mean, I guess the flip side is true also, because, you know, so the way I've always thought about politics is I have a view on how I think a government should run. I know that no politician and no government will ever align 100% to that way, but so you compromise and you go, okay, who's most closely aligned to my way of thinking, and so therefore I'll throw my vote in behind them. And I can really empathize with the people that, you know, in this election round said that, you know, kind of found themselves as part of the politically homeless, because I mean, the you know, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were fucking atrocious. I mean, I can't stand Kamala Harris. She's full on socialist communist. I don't agree with communism and socialism in any way, shape, or form. And Joe Biden is an incoherent fool.
Well, he's a warmonger, really. I mean, that's kind of like what everyone's concerns are, like us getting, you know, the United States getting involved with more foreign, you know, conflict. And you know, some of the Trump supporters were like, well, at least, you know, Trump didn't get us in any more wars. And I was just like, true. But if you know, say you convicted someone of rape, you could be like, well, at least they didn't like murder the woman. You know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, that's good, you know, but all the other things that he fucked up and created and divided people under, I think that, and his attack on like treasonous attack on democracy, I think is like fucking horrible, you know? And I mean, I voted for Biden just because I didn't want to vote for Trump, and I didn't want to.
I was gonna ask you, because I could guess who you would vote for, and I was going to ask you, was it because you agreed with a particular policy, or was it because you would vote for anybody other than Trump?
Yeah, I mean, exactly that. Like I voted for the guy who ran against Trump, not necessarily Joe Biden, because like I said, like I don't, you know, there's a lot of things that that we have to keep these politicians accountable for, you know, and the whole thing just felt like a work to me, man. Just like in some, I mean, you know, when I sit around and dream up all of my, like, you know, sort of dystopian ideas about what's going on, I'm like, yeah, maybe there's like some conspiracy about they're gonna create this guy Trump who can have, you know, such a divisive person, but the real demon is like the next guy who takes over after him. You know what I mean? And that I mean, that could be true. I don't know. I mean,
have you? I don't know how far down the rabbit hole you've gone, but have you read up anything about the Great Reset and any of the information that the World Economic Forum has shared about their vision for the future?
I haven't. That's the kind of, like, I need to keep my mind in like a decent positive space these last few months, and I've been trying not to get too deeply into these things. Like I got a bunch of things I got to get over the fence in the next few weeks that I've been building up towards over the last few months. So it's like between the pandemic and the you know, all the hate and everything that's going on in this country, the civil unrest, you know, the riots, all this, the election, everything, I just have to keep my eye on the ball with some other stuff. So I haven't checked any of that stuff out.
Yeah. And that's the thing, man. You like 2020 is definitely a year, I think, in which mentally you need to insulate yourself against an awful lot, because if you gave yourself over to certain emotions or certain modes of thinking too much, you're going to drive yourself fucking insane.
Oh, I know people that have done that. Yeah. I know people just like completely immobilized by like anxiety and just fear and talking about buying guns. And I'm like,
well, gun sales in the States have gone out of control. And I mean, the thing that's worrying is the tables being laid for worse to come, because I mean, if I don't think that it will, but say for example these legal claims or these affidavits amount to something, and there was improprieties, or they can prove there was something, and somehow the election gets overturned. I mean, Jesus Christ! And actually, I say the election gets overturned. The elections have not been verified, so it could very well still be that they do recounts, and in the when the states then confirm what their numbers are, turns out, by the way, it wasn't Biden who won. So the news media created probably a worse problem than they would have done had they just stood back and said, let's wait for this to play out. There's a part of me that looked at that and I was thinking to myself, like, do you guys actually, I can see why they would. Like, do you want there to be a civil war? Do you think that guarantees your ratings for the next 4 years?
Civil war is like, do I believe there might be social unrest? Yeah. But do I think that there's going to be like an organized civil war? No, because I don't think that most people really have a real grasp on what war really is.
Yeah, like, no, that is true.
The moment you got to sit there with your buddy's brains all over your hands, people are going to reconsider what they're doing. I know that everyone likes to play act and be like, oh, well, we're like Antifa or the Proud Boys, and we're this like badass group of extremists, and but the reality is, like, if you guys if any of those people had to actually be in a war, I don't think that they would be able to. I think
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you, and I think actually I probably misspoke in that. I think large scale civil unrest, which lines back into what I was saying before. I think there's only so far you can push people until they're going to start rioting. But then you go, okay, what's the response to this? Maybe the word's not reasonably, but part of me goes, the only way in which you can control that then is through a large show of force that gets it under control. But then people would accuse the government of being authoritarian or fascist or whatever the case may be. It's a fucking shit situation.
Yeah, but I mean, I got to be honest with you. I think that Donald Trump is already looking towards his civilian career as like maybe the host of some kind of cable access show or something. You know what I mean? Like, why the hell would he want to stay as in government? The guy has no experience like leading people, or doesn't even understand the Constitution really. And it's, you can. That's where people like Biden, who are actually politicians who understand government, who understand the Constitution. Regardless of whether or not they adhere to the letter of the Constitution, you have a guy who's blatantly violating that. And frankly, all of the reading I've done, all of these accusations of voter fraud are complete flights of fancy. They're smoke screens. Yeah. He set this up months ago, where he's like, oh well, we're gonna have they're going to steal the election from me and all this. It's just building a narrative, and I grew up with Donald Trump, in New York City, and his whole thing is like perception. He wants to be thought of as like a certain type of person. He wants celebrities to he loves celebrities. He has a plane with his logo parked at LaGuardia Airport.
Yeah.
But the plane doesn't fly though.
Yeah,
it's there so that you can, when you land, you see a thing that says Trump on it.
If you had the money, you wouldn't have a plane that says Mike and then has the TOMBS logo on the other side.
I would do that totally, man. Like
one last question. Just speaking of podcasts, how are your podcasts going? So right now, what's active is Necromantics, Everything Went Black, and Metal Matters.
Yeah, well, the Metal Matters one is like an actual gig that happens every week that I produce that, but that's not really my own. It's like Gimme Metals, the music platform. That's their show basically. So they could fire me and get someone else to do it if they wanted to. You know what I mean? So, but that one's going pretty well. We got our 100th episode that I'm actually recording today later. and that's going well. Necromaniacs is
Necromaniacs.
a lot
Sorry,
of fun.
I don't know why I call it Necromantics.
Well, there's the German Jörg Buttgereit film Necromantic.
Yeah.
Excellent movie. But yeah, that's a lot of fun, man. We just stepped that up to weekly, and Jeff Kashid from ISIS joined us as another co-host, and me and Mike are still doing it, and it's a lot of fun, man. We're doing it weekly. I feel like the quality of the show has been improving. And then Everything Went Black is like this kind of free form, storytelling. Since the pandemic started, it's been just this kind of outlet, I guess, of like a weekly men's group, I guess, where it feels like me and like 30 other guys like talk about, I talk and then I get emails and it's like, yeah, man, like life's been tough, that kind of thing. It's like a support group for other men, so, but yeah, I mean, eventually I'd like to do something really interesting with that as far as storytelling goes. Cause it's like, between all the people I know, I'm sure everyone's got great stories, and I think that a lot of people enjoy that. It's like when I earlier this year, I was part of this event around John Wiederhorn, the launch of John Wiederhorn's new book, Raising Hell, which is just stories of being on the road. And I was there with Alex Skolnick and John and the three of us, and we had it at the Strand in New York City. And it was like, I'm like, wow, this is like a real author like is here. These are like, we were in the event room, which is like the rare book room. And it's like all these like really rare volumes. There's like a green room and production. And there's like hospitality there, like, water and stuff and whatever. I felt like I was at a show. And they're like, they bring you out and there's like people and you read and you read excerpts of the book. And I was like, man, people kind of like this stuff. So yeah, I think eventually that's what I'd like to do with Everything Went Black, is make it more just about storytelling as opposed to the interview format, So we'll see what happens.
And I would assume after my 2 guest appearances on your podcast, you've been inundated with messages like, bring Jackie back.
Yeah, huge.
Well, so I put the feelers out and I was like, I just thought to myself, it might be interesting to see who people's favorite guest was. And maybe do like a guest of the year, 2020 episode to kick off next year. But it turns out you probably got the most votes, mate. So
really?
we're possibly preempting that. It was kind of a toss-up between you, Kelly Schaefer from Atheist, and Ghoul from Mayhem. So
wow, that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So well done. But listen, brother, I really appreciate your time. I've kept you probably for much longer than you have time, because I know you're a very busy guy. So thank you so much. Great record. I can't wait for people to hear it and see what they think. And awesome catching up with you as always.
Hell yeah, definitely, man. Have a good night. Thanks
you,
once again, man. Thanks for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Dude, always a pleasure having you on, and we'll do it again at some point in the future.
Count me in.
All right. Take care, dude.
Cheers.
Bye-bye. Thank you to Mike for coming on the show. Like I said at the very start of our journey together, I always love catching up with him. And he will definitely be back on in 2021. I think, probably one of the guys that will be on the shortlist for Guest of the Year. And I did want to do a Guest of the Year episode. So, I think there's a very good chance that you'll be seeing him sooner rather than later if his schedule allows for it. But I had a great time catching up with him. And we probably didn't talk about Under Sullen Skies quite as much as I'd intended. But that's okay, because I'm going to talk to you about it now. And I will tell you unequivocally that this is the best Tombs record that you will ever hear. It is, of course, if you're a Tombs fan, the follow-up to the last full length that they put out in 2017 called The Grand Annihilation. Probably spiritually more of a follow-up to the EP that came out earlier in this year called Monarchy of Shadows. Truthfully, that EP would probably have made it onto my best of 2020 had it not been an EP. I kind of have a rule that I don't include EPs on my best of lists, purely because there's already so much that I need to try and sift through. That's one easy way of kind of thinning down the race. But be that as it may, Under Sullen Skies for me is a real return to a lot of the more aggressive black metal influenced music that Tombs probably got their career started in. So when you think of some of the stuff that you may remember of Path of Totality, which came out in 2011, maybe a few hints of what you heard on Savage Gold. And certainly the record starts, as I mentioned to Mike, like a much more kind of traditional or traditionally rooted black metal album. I think there's always going to be an element where Tombs sounds distinct from anybody else, and I think part of that is Mike Hill's vocal style, and also the fact that he frequently brings in influences from bands like Fields of the Nephilim, Triptychon, Celtic Frost, etc. And on this record, it's no different. But initially at least, on Bone Furnace, Void Constellation, and Baron, the first three songs, those influences are kind of thrown out sparingly. Then comes a track called The Hunger, which, in my view, is one of the strongest singles in 2020. It's something that I can see gaining traction probably on, things like, I don't know what the fuck they call the radio stations in the States, to be honest with you, and I don't listen to the radio, but you know what I mean. Rock radio or hard rock radio. It's something that I think could open up a lot of doors for the band. I would say, though, that if you heard the single and you thought that's what the rest of the record sounds like, right around the point that it hits track 5, Secrets of the Black Sun, this album takes a gear shift of epic proportions, and you're thrown into a series of songs that are just laden with darkness, just grim, menacing atmosphere, and just badassery. And I think ultimately what this comes down to is I feel like this is the record that is the most confident I've heard Mike sound. Again, mentioned that to him on the interview, but I think it's worth mentioning it here. It also ties into what I mentioned before about bands being confident in their expression and doing or being true and being authentic to what they want to deliver. And I think that's really what's happened here. I think the new lineup is outstanding. I'm not 100% sure if it's Drew Murphy, the bassist, or Matt Medeiros, the guitarist, or the second guitarist, I should say, who does backing vocals on that single, The Hunger. But he sounds fucking awesome. He sounds like a black metal version of Matt Pike from High on Fire. But yeah, really, I think this is a phenomenal record, and it is one of the best records that Tombs has ever put out, if not their best ever record. I am super, super happy that that I think Mike is back in a place where creatively he's pleased with what Tombs are doing. He's feeling positive and energized about the band. I really do hope that that this fucking ban on concerts and gigs and travel and touring and stuff lifts, because I think that Tombs deserves to be touring this album, and to have audiences a year with This Sounds Like Live. Regardless, for now, there's a captive audience that can listen to it. I hope that you're going to be one of them. I think this is fantastic. Like I said, record is called Under Sullen Skies. It's out on November the 20th on Season of Mist. It is a must-have of 2020 in my view. And I've spoken about it many times on this episode already, so I will play it to you right now. This is a track called The Hunger. That was The Hunger by Tombs off a record called Under Sullen Skies, available as of November the 20th on Season of Mist. Once again, link to the Bandcamp will be in the description of the podcast. And if you go there and you buy anything, let Mike know that it was Into the Necrosphere who sent you. And as he said, number 22 on the Decibel Top 40 of 2020. Who knows where Tombs will land on the of the top 20 of 2020, I should say, for Into the Necrosphere, which, quite frankly, is the more true and the more cult list. Anyway, let's talk about another band. Cult Burial out of the UK are a two-man project that have been around for actually a fairly short period of time, from my understanding. They've got an EP out, they put out an EP, I think last year, that was really well received. They are back now with their full length, a self-titled record. They are releasing independently. God only knows why, because, I mean, for me, this is another one of those bands that, like Master's Call and Stellar Master Elite, either somebody at a record label is really dropping the ball in terms of not noticing them, or maybe they just decided that the record label route is not for them. But regardless, this is absolutely fucking sensational stuff. Especially for a debut. The production, the songwriting, everything is fantastic. Style-wise, the first two tracks, Dethroner and Moribund, are probably more in the traditional death metal vein. And it's as of a track called Chaos, which hits at track number 3, that you start getting the sense of the band's willingness and their eagerness to color outside the lines. So a lot of the kind of traditional death metal trappings they avoid completely. They throw in a lot of black metal influences and a lot of influences from a lot of different avenues that just fall together really, really well. Frankly, I'm not 100% sure what bands these guys played in previously, and actually looking now at the metal archives, it doesn't look to me like these guys have been in a lot of other stuff before. I think Cesar, I hope I'm not destroying the pronunciation of his name, but he's been in a band called N Blood, but outside of that, nothing. And then Simon Langford, who, from my understanding, is the main songwriter and the main man behind the band. Cult Burial has been his thing all along. So I am gobsmacked by how good this sounds. I know that my buddy Mark, from Mark's Metal Minute, was really impressed with this too. I think you guys are going to be also. And I mentioned the track in my review. I'm going to play it for you right now. This is off the self-titled debut by Cult Burial, and the song is called Chaos. Chaos by Cult Burial off the debut record of the same name. Absolutely fantastic. And make sure that you guys go and check it out. And to the Cult Burial gang, if any of you guys want to jump on the show or jump on the Zoom machine and chew the fat with old Jackson in the new year, I would love to have you on. I think this record is absolutely extraordinary, and I think it makes a case, very strong case, for the best debut of 2020. So fine work, gentlemen. Right, let us move over now to the news desk. And the first headline that is drawing my attention on Metal Storm is Tribulation. Launch first song from the upcoming record. It says here on January the 29th, Tribulation will release their new studio album Where the Gloom Becomes Sound via Century Media Records worldwide. For a first impression of their album, the video for its first single, Leviathans, produced by Ulf Lunden, has been unleashed. I have to say, Tribulation for me is like a little bit like Uada, in that I have just never been able to wrap my head around this band. I was very, very psyched to hear the previous record that they brought out, which the name escapes me now, but I remember there being an extraordinary amount of hype around it, and so I psyched myself up accordingly, and when I listened to it, it just didn't do anything for me. So I've listened to that single. It's not bad, but it's just not... It comes down to what I've said many times before, and I'm going to probably talk about this a whole lot more. So, I'm you're probably going to have to be patient with me repeating the same phrase over and over again. But the bar for black metal and for extreme music in general gets raised so exponentially every single year that, what might have sounded great in 2014 or 2012, or would have been, up there as one of the best releases of the year in that time, it just doesn't cut it anymore, in my opinion. And when you have bands like Versio Humanitatis and Selbst, Panzerfaust and Ucana and bands like that putting out just phenomenal music, a band like Tribulation just comes across sounding weak by comparison. Speaking of weak, Therion, Leviathan album announced. What the fuck is it with people calling their records or their songs Leviathan at the moment? I did really like a couple of the earlier Therion stuff, particularly the Lemuria and Sirius B double record that they put out. And I think this was back in like 2005. But I heard this, and it was atrocious. It says here, Therion are proud to unleash the first single and title track from their upcoming 17th studio album, Leviathan. I listened to the track as well. The lyrics are on a par with Chris Adler's gang. Something like, in the Mediterranean, where the chaos dwells. It's like, people go on fucking summer holiday in the Mediterranean, buddy. It's not exactly a place where the chaos dwells. Machine Head released new single and music video, My Hands Are Empty. The newest single from Machine Muck is out today. Another track that I listened to, it's abysmal, absolutely abysmal. I don't understand how this band recently went through the process or the cycle of revisiting Burn My Eyes, and then decided that this was really the direction they wanted to go in musically. I think it's complete and utter shit. And I've got questions now about how Mike is going to, well, not Mike, sorry, about how Rob is going to keep himself relevant, as it's starting to appear increasingly likely that Trump is going to be out of office. So that cuts down his ability to get onto the blabbermouth headlines by at least 90%, because the music certainly won't cut it. Horner unleash Hautogen Titan Yona song. I've not listened to this yet, but I know that a lot of people are very excited about it. By the way, I've noticed that bands aren't exactly making it easy for us at the end of this year to come up with our best of 2020 lists. Acclease, obviously, are bringing out their new record on the 14th of December. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second, because I think Deborah Morty and Black Metal Promotion streamed it this week. I have already listened to it at least 10, 15 times, and it is fucking stunning. And then, obviously, Inquisition also dropped a single this week, which was also brilliant. So there may have to be a Best of 2020 episode, and then Best of 2020 Revisited. We'll do that in February. Anyway, Mr. Bungle present new video. So they call them American avant-garde thrashers. I mean, they're not really thrashers. This is the demo that this is a re-recording of, from my understanding, is thrash. And then, everything else they've done has been super avant-garde. I really liked it. I'm not as big of a fan of this yet. I know that quite a few people have told me it's actually very good. And I know that I should probably spend proper time and listen to it and not just write it off. But I don't know. It's just not doing anything for me. One thing I have been very surprised by, though, is the new AC/DC. So AC/DC's Power Up album is coming up tomorrow worldwide before its release day. Give a spin to the new streaming song, Realize. Realize was surprisingly good, and it made me realize that actually AC/DC seemed to still have some relatively good ideas up their sleeves, at least by AC/DC standards. I mean, no one is going to listen to this and go, I've hated every single thing they've put out before. But you know what? Power Up has really changed my mind. AC/DC are AC/DC, and that's a beautiful thing. And the new album is a beautiful thing. And again, maybe this was the record that we needed in 2020 to take us away from all of the depressing shit that has flooded the news of late. Inquisition, new video released. Luciferian Rays, a brand new track by the black metal duo Inquisition, is now streaming below. The song is going to be featured on the band's forthcoming album, for which no details have been revealed yet. I think the album, from my understanding, is called Black Mass for a Mass Grave, and it's coming out on Agonia Records. Good art is good art, and Luciferian Rays is a fucking great song, and I think that the new Inquisition record is going to be really good as well. And that's my take on that. Folks may have a different opinion to me on that, which is fine. I feel like if I agreed with every single thing, or if I had to agree with every single thing that someone I listened to, or someone whose music I listened to, stood for or said, I probably wouldn't listen to anything. Right, Ecclese, new album streaming in full 1 month before official release date. I mentioned the Ecclese record a second ago. I've listened to this countless times already. The album's called Melano. It is fucking fantastic, and kudos to Deborah Morty Productions for the way in which they've kind of built the hype up around this record. I mean, I think the talent on display has helped build the hype up as well. But I actually can't remember people being this full of anticipation for an album at this late stage of the year. It's just, I mean, there's no other way to describe it. You heard me talk to Mike about it as well on the show. I feel like they've taken the barriers of what could be considered black and badass and evil, and they've pushed it that one step further. The best record in the Ecclese back catalog by no small stretch of the imagination, and that's saying something, because their last two records have been very, very good. But this album is something quite extraordinary. I think this is a landmark record in my view. But anyway, I'll talk more about that on an upcoming episode. I'm not going to give them a double review. Needless to say, it is fucking excellent. Karak Angren released a cinematic video for Frankensteiner Stratomontanus. I listened to this as well, and actually, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It kind of reminds me of a slightly black metal-y version of Death Stars, but not bad. I've never really liked anything hokey, particularly in black metal. I think that's part of why I dislike stuff like Dimmu Borgir and Cradle of Filth as much as I do. I mean, Dimmu Borgir less so, because they did have really good stuff in the early days. But, things that are kind of cheesy or hokey or too theatrical, I think it may have its place in other styles of music, but it sure as fuck doesn't have its place in in black metal. I want black metal to be, it's like horror movies. I don't like I'm trying to think what the phrase would be, the knowing wink in horror movies where they kind of pull you out of the experience and remind you that you're watching a movie, by making some stupid joke or throwing in some one-liner. I feel like the theatrical stuff when it comes to black metal is almost the same. I know that Morgan from Marduk is not a crazed fucking lunatic. I know that the guys from Panzerfaust aren't, warmongering psychos. But when I'm in the midst of that experience, I don't want to be reminded of that. And so that's why, and I'm probably rambling here a little bit, but I think some of you guys will probably catch catch my drift as to what I'm talking about. Killer Be Killed, another new song streaming online. talking of albums that I had a very, very little hope for, the last Killer Be Killed record I thought was okay, but this one I think is really, really good. So Killer Be Killed have debuted a third single, Inner Calm from Outer Storms, from the eagerly awaited new record Reluctant Euro, due on November 20 through Nuclear Blast Records. Yeah, it's very good. I mean, obviously, for those that don't know, Killer Be Killed is a super group of sorts, featuring Greg Puciato from the Dillinger Escape Plan, Troy Sanders from Mastodon, and Max Cavalera. I think this record works quite well because Max's role is minimized, to say the least. His vocals actually sound pretty good. I don't know whether he regained his powers after cutting off those god awful fucking dreadlocks. It's a cool tune, and I'm looking forward to hearing that or hearing the rest of that record. Let's see what else there is on the Metal Storm. Mercifully, so far, nothing about the election, although we'll go to Blabbermouth in a second and no doubt see quite a lot there. Azarath revealed new song in anticipation of the forthcoming Saint Desecration album release on November the 27th. Poland's black death metal tyrants Azarath premiere a new music video called, or new music piece, I should say, called No Salvation. Not bad. I thought it was quite cool. Again, the bar for Polish black metal is also increasing exponentially. Azarath, I feel, are outdone somewhat by some of the folk in their genre or in their local scene. Again, God knows what is going on in the water in Poland, but there are great bands churning out there like there's no tomorrow. At the Gates begin recording new album. So this is the successor to 2018's To Drink From the Night Itself. I love that album, and I was distraught when I heard them say that it's going to follow a very different route to that record. I really hope that they haven't kind of fallen prey to the critics of that record and decided to go back to something more closer in sound to Slaughter of the Soul. Slaughter of the Soul, I still think is a good record, but I think it's a little overrated because I think the stuff they did after that is way, way, way better. And for me, To Drink From the Night Itself was just a fantastic record. I think At the Gates managed to distill everything that was cool about their earlier music, and they brought a kind of modern and a dark touch to it, which I thought just really fucking hit the mark. So hopefully it's not going to be too much of a change. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Blabbermouth. Corey Taylor plays socially distanced show in front of 12 people, calls it an unbelievable experience. I think it's unbelievable that people listen to this fucking geek. Metallica's Lars Ulrich, we model our existence somewhat on Grateful Dead, meaning that Grateful Dead made 4 good records and somehow managed to remain a massive band, regardless of the fact that they didn't bring out anything good after that. I really do think and again, another thing that I spoke to Mike about as well, but I just want to tie into that again. Like when I say bands like Slayer ran out of good ideas in after Season of Mist, I'm not necessarily hating on them entirely. There is an element of hate there, but it's not complete hate. What it is it's acknowledging that I think for those of us who are aged 35 and older, there are a number of sacred cows who got some fairly easy passes when it came to releasing new music. There is no one that's going to be able to convince me that had Metallica put out a record or at a new band come on the scene with a demo called Death Magnetic, that they would have been even close to as massive as they are now. I would question the fact whether something like Saint Anger would even have gotten them signed. And for me, with Slayer, it's kind of almost the same thing. There are a lot of bands that were coming out around the time that they put out World Painted Blood. I called it World Rain and Blood, I think, on on my interview. But anyway, who gives a shit? World Painted Blood, or Repentless, which was just the biggest fucking, or the wettest, stinkiest, dustiest mustard fart to go out on if you were going to finish your career on something. I think there's a question in my mind as to whether those bands would have been signed all together. There were good moments on those albums. I still went to go and see Metallica a couple of years ago. I saw Slayer a couple of years ago. There's still a lot of love in my heart for those bands, but I just think I try not to dwell too much in the past, and I think a band should be judged on what they're putting out in the here and now, rather than us kind of, creaming our shorts over it just because it has a certain brand on it. I mean, that's like the dullards that, line up for every fucking iPhone that comes out, in spite of the fact that, Apple haven't really done anything of any real consequence as far as innovation is concerned with the iPhone for fucking years. Tommy Lee teams up with Machine Gun Kelly. 24K golden on new track Climb. This is actually so terrible. I'm not even going to try and make fun of Tommy Lee because of this post, or use this as a platform to make fun of Tommy Lee. I'll just say, if you want to laugh, listen to about 10 seconds of the song. It'll feel like 10 minutes. It is atrocious, and he is a fucking asshole. And again, now that Trump is likely to be voted out of the White House, how is this guy going to make his way onto the pages of Blabbermouth? Because as far as music is concerned, he ain't got shit. Machine Head, Yawn. Megadeth's David Ellefson to release first fiction novel. Isn't novel by definition fictional? Yeah, I thought that was amusing. And then it says, it's called The Sledge Chronicles. Rockstar Hitman is the first chapter in the action-packed saga of Sledge, an up-and-coming musician who uncovers a startling quid pro quo. In exchange for achieving his dreams of rock stardom, I would assume, because I'm not even going to bother to click on read more, he becomes a hitman. Yawn. I don't really think there's anything else much worth talking about on here. Dirk Verburen pinches himself all the time as the drummer of Megadeth. Drugger of Megadeth, I nearly said. But let's ignore Megadeth because I think they fall under that same category as the Slayers and the Metallicas. But Dirk Verburen's work on Brave the Cold is brilliant. Although I think that list is now becoming so momentous that I'm not even sure Brave the Cold is going to make the top 20 of 2020. So, again, you want to, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, but it's going to be a hell of a double episode. And like I said, I've got Kelly T lined up for that. And I've also got the gentlemen who comprise Omega Infinity lined up for that. So I'm really looking forward to it this year. It's going to be a fun 2 episodes to record. And by the way, Kelly T has got a really great channel, and she goes deep into black metal, which I find so odd because she seems like such a sweet girl. She's so well presented and articulate. I mean, not to say that people that are into this music are not articulate, because I'd be pointing the finger at myself here, but she just seems too normal to be in any way involved in this hullabaloo. Anyway, there's nothing else here that I want to talk about. That's news done. All going to plan next week. I'm going to have Jeremy Wagner of Broken Hope joining me for the final installment of my epic, hard as fuck death metal countdown. The countdown of my top 50 favorite death metal bands. And if you thought the rest of it was badass, wait until you hear the top 10. Hard as shit. But yeah, that's going to hopefully be happening. And then I've got a few other things lined up. And then I think on December the 8th and December the 15th will probably be when those best of episodes drop. And then I'm going to have a little break for Christmas because I'm telling you guys right now, it's been a tiring couple of weeks and a couple of months, but weeks in particular. I got promoted recently. And it now means that my work day has expanded to probably about 12 or 13 hours. And then on top of that, I've got the podcast and, my obligations as both a father and a lover to my girlfriend. So, it's, it does wear on a person. And I think you guys will probably feel the same as I do, betwixt all of the lockdown shit and the fucking never-ending drudgery of the politics and all of the other crap. I just feel like it's time to see out 2020 now. But that being, all of that being said, what an incredible year for music this has been. And, also let me just say it again, and I know I say it often, what a great year for this podcast. You guys tuned in, in numbers that I sure as fuck never expected to see when I started this. I think the subscribers now on YouTube are a cool 346, but I think we're doing about 4,000 downloads per episode across all other platforms now. And again, I understand that because most people are not going to spend 2.5 hours looking at my face on YouTube. And most people also don't pay for YouTube Premium, so you don't get, you can't minimize the app and kind of have it playing on your phone if you don't have that. So it stands to reason most people are going to download this on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever else you get your podcasts from. But I just want to say I so deeply appreciate it and so appreciate the support because I didn't expect any of it. I certainly don't take it for granted. But I love that you guys enjoy the show because I like doing it. It's a real escape for me from corporate life. I think that's pretty much my sermonizing done for the week. It's pissing down with rain outside, but regardless of that, I am going to be going out very shortly, and I'm going to be cooking up some ribs today. I'm going to fire up the smoker. There'll be photos up on Demon Barbecue, so if you want to follow that and give me a like, the more likes I get, the quicker I can start getting those endorsements. and that's going to be pretty much my day done. Barbecue, a couple of beers, and maybe playing The Last of Us 2. I've started replaying that again because I bought myself a fucking badass new computer, but because NVIDIA fucked up the launch of the new RTX GPUs this year, I have now been waiting for 2 months and counting for my new graphics card, and until I have that, I'm not going to be able to play my 4K games or watch my pornography in 4K. That really is what hurts me most. What doesn't hurt me, though, is that I'm going to say to all of you, I hope wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you have yourself a fucking great week ahead of you. I hope you are well, safe, and healthy. From the mean streets of Great Shefford, because I was told by my girlfriend that apparently Hungerford is not so salubrious and also not as close to us as Great Shefford, I am wishing you all a fond farewell.